Okay.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting for July 8th, 2025. I would like to call the meeting to order, and I'll need a mover and a seconder to do that. Moved by Member Foisey, seconded by Member Langlois. That this meeting be open at 6 p.m. All in favor? That's carried. Adoption of the agenda. I will need a mover and a seconder to move that forward. Moved by Member Paquette. Second by Member Rabunski. That the agenda presented to the Planning Advisory Committee dated July 8th, 2025 be adopted as prepared. All in favor? That's carried. Adoption of the previous minutes. Look for mover and a seconder. Moved by Member Foisey, seconded by Member Rabunski. That the minutes of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting day of June 3rd, 2025 be adopted as circulated. Questions or comments on those? All in favor? That is carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I believe we do not have any presentations by the public this evening. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
So we will move into the meat of the meeting, which is the consent application before us, which is consent application V11 2025. Duquette. I will actually ask our planning administrator to maybe walk through a little bit, and then we can move through the motions.
Sure, sounds good. So the committee here did receive the agenda package ahead of time, and basically this is a repeat application from one that was already approved in 2022, I believe. And what it is the creation of one new lot. So basically it's an existing dwelling, and the accessory buildings with that would be severed off as a new lot. There's also a lot addition, which is a kind of an irregular sliver of land that loops around the back of what some may know as Toner's Welding. It's just a small addition to that property. And then what would be the case with the larger land holding to the rear of it all, on which there's an existing mounted solar installation, would become a retained parcel of just rural land. So the application says is a repeat. It's the same sketch and survey essentially as what was previously approved, and this would result in approximately the division of existing 58 acres or 23.5 hectares of land, of which approximately 8 acres or 3.16 hectares are proposed to be severed as part of the existing dwelling and accessory structures. And then that further acre or 0.4 hectares would be transferred to Toner's Welding. This means that the remaining 49 acres or 19.8 hectares would be those rural vacant lands, including solar panels.
So, question that
Sure.
0.4 hectares that's being proposed to add to the rural. So, where is that being taken from?
So off the existing parcel, so it's the red sliver that loops around the back of Toner's
The
Welding.
existing parcel is all this here.
That's right, all of it. So the red piece is integrated as part of the wider. At the moment, it's all existing, right, within that concession. So it loops around the back of what is shown as number 77 there. That's all part of the same parcel at the moment. So in terms of planning history, it looks like in 1991 there was a previous lot addition which occurred. I couldn't actually find the sketch in our files to indicate what happened there, but it was a long time ago when it was prior to the current plan period, and so it doesn't have an impact in any way really in terms of the number of severances that are permitted at this time. And but that already occurred in relation to these properties. Also, there was the application for ground mounted solar installation. So back in 2015, an organization called Moose Power Inc. Submitted a proposal for a 500 kilowatt solar farm, taking advantage of the independent electricity system operators feed-in tariff, which existed at the time. So the rules were that basically, so long as it was in compliance with the Environmental Protection Act, that was determined to be a permitted use, and that was approved by council representing Bonfield on the 22nd of September 2015. And that system still exists today, and those feed-in tariffs generally have a lifespan of up to 20 years, or the agreements that were signed did before it was abolished. And then in 2021, sorry, rather than 2022, B 2022-2021 was the application, which is the same essentially as what we have now, which was to transfer that 8 acres of severed lot and the 1 acre to Toners Welding. So what's happened over the past 3 years is the applicant has worked to satisfy some of those original conditions. And they had a survey plan, they were just about there, but for reasons unknown to us, they didn't proceed to actually register the transfer on title. So the clock ran out. I'm not sure they were aware of that until that took place. It was prior to my joining the township as well. It was last spring. So it is what it is. But we tried to help the applicant out of good faith. And so we've proposed as part of this package that the existing payment in lieu of parkland contribution that they made, which is less than what we would currently ask for, because we passed a new bylaw last year, which has a higher threshold. So we're saying that we should accept that contribution. It's already been in our account, and it's not something that they need to satisfy as a new condition. So just looking at the policy context to all this, won't go into too much detail. It's on the agenda package if anyone needs to read, but basically we know the provincial planning statement is yeah.
Maybe if you pull up this document, it'll just explain to us better what's happening, this sketch
Yes, is that at the back of the
at the
package?
back.
So after the application form, I think I've got that one there. Yeah, so
It
it's
just shows a little better.
yeah, it does, yeah. Maybe show it to the camera there, but in case anybody wants to see it. But really, yeah, the 8 acres is what's classed as the new lot, the severed lot. So that includes the existing dwelling, the garage, and I believe there's another outbuilding there. And then the roughly 1 acre is shown here, kind of wrapping around the back of Toners Welding. That's not really developable land, and we'll come to that shortly because there's a tributary that runs through that, so it's protected in a way. So, but it's good for it to be encapsulated within the Toners property because it acts as like a buffer between that and the retained lands to the rear, to the north, that property.
So the new lot is containing the garage and it being taken out of the hole.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that larger retained lands, there's no specific proposal at this time to do anything with that other than to continue to retain that feed-in tariff agreement that exists for the next 10 years or so. And, you know, obviously as a township, any other proposals that may come forward for that land would be subject to its own process and consultation at the time of all different agencies. So it's not something, there's no imminent development being proposed there. So it falls within the rural area, so it kind of just evaluated some of the rural policies that exist in place, which, you know, Bonfield Township also has quite generous provisions, if you like, in terms of what we can do in the rural area. There's no significant impact in terms of the environmental side of stuff. The development constraint area that runs in parallel, if you like, with the water course. Consultation with the Conservation Authority determined that should any development be proposed within 15 meters of that watercourse, that a Section 28 permit would be required. So that seems sufficient to maintain that buffer from Toners Welding and the retained lands, at the same time as allowing you know, those land holdings to do what they need to do to carry on about their business. There's no barns present within the local area within a 500-meter radius, so there's no requirement to do any minimum distance separation calculations. It's the agriculture side and just making sure that you're balancing some of the amenity considerations of farms with housing, and the house exists anyway, so there's no actual impact there. Wetlands, the nearest wetland is approximately 700 meters north of the proposed severed lot. So again, it's beyond the area of influence that would require any form of study to take place. In terms of consultation responses, as mentioned, the North Bay Mattaway Conservation Authority satisfied the application is consistent with policies set out in section 5.2 of the provincial planning statement, so does not raise any objections or concerns to the proposal. They mentioned about that 15-meter buffer, as I say, in which case the section 28 permit would be required. They also noted that in regards to both the severed property, which would have the dwelling and the accessory units, and also the retained land, this with the solar farm on it to the rear, that should development ever be proposed on those, that there is still sufficient land to accommodate a new on-site sewage system and well. So basically they're comfortable with the lot sizes as proposed.
One question, this little sliver,
Yeah.
who is that little sliver going to?
To Turner's Welding.
To this parcel right here?
Yeah, so I didn't speak to them as owners and they didn't respond to this application themselves, but my assumption is that maybe perhaps they've used a little bit of that land over the years, and so it's just an opportunity through this severance application just to clean up some of those land
If they
ownership.
accept it.
Oh, they've obviously discussed
Yeah.
between them, yeah,
Okay.
they're willing to purchase it, yeah.
Okay. And driveways, like to this retained.
Yeah, so the Ministry of Transportation previously, perfect timing. So in terms of like agencies' comments, the retained lot, so the ministry stated that the density of entrances on the highway in this location have been calculated to be at the maximum. So no new or upgraded entrances would be considered by the MTO in this section of highway corridor. So the dwelling as it exists has its own access. Turner's Welding has 2 points of access, I believe, and then there's also the field entrance which leads to the solar farm. So all the access points that they need for what is being proposed here already exist. So no new entrances are being created, and should any development ever be proposed in those back lots, then obviously that would require a whole other conversation with the MTO about that.
So this Turner's Welding, is that the house that we saw in a picture?
No, that's the one that's on the
That existing.
Yeah, so it now thought it was a new dwelling. It's an existing dwelling that just put new siding on it. That's why it's kind of got some construction materials on it right now. So the Trans-Canada Pipeline is over 2 kilometers away, so not wouldn't affect this. The Bonfield Snowmobile Club, but did not raise any concerns or objections, noting that the nearest easement, if you like, that they have is well west of Maple Road and any of the trails. One comment was received from the owner of 39 Highway 17 East, who just stated that if the MTO doesn't have any objections, then neither does he. So it was more just to kind of understand what the application was about, just get some clarification, had it changed from the previous version. So he seemed content that the issue had already been addressed, let's say. But he did comment that his main concern is just the volume, not necessarily the volume, but just the risk of accidents in that location, which has been known to happen. Public Works haven't offered any specific comments, or the fire department at this time. And yeah, so that largely summarizes it. So I guess I could, unless there's any more questions, I could pass it back to Jason to discuss conditions and.
Any questions before I read the motion? So I'll read the motion and then I'll look for mover and a seconder if that's fair. So it will be moved and seconded that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends to council that the consent application B11-2025 Duquette, which proposes the creation of one new lot and one lot addition on lands referred to as 91 Highway 17 East, be approved subject to the following conditions. 1, that this approval applies to the transfer as applied, for which shows one new lot and one lot addition on part of lot 3, concession 13, remainder of parcel 18256 NIP. 2, that the following documents be provided. A, the original executed transfer or deed, a duplicate original, and 1 photocopy for our records. B, a copy of the survey plan deposited in the land titles office if required. C, an electronic copy of the survey emailed to planning@bonfieldtownship.com. D, a schedule describing the severed parcel attached to the transfer for approval purposes. E, a schedule that provides a registerable legal description attached to the transfer for the retained land for approval purposes, if required. 3, that the building setbacks for all buildings must meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw for the retained and or severed lots, whichever are effective at the time of the survey. 4, a fee of 5% in lieu of parkland dedication for each transfer document shall be deposited in the office of the clerk prior to the stamping of any transfer document condition is satisfied. 5, if any tax arrears must be paid prior to the stamping of transfer documents for a new lot. 6, that the North Yamato Conservation Authority, 1, be consulted throughout the development of individual site plans associated with the proposed development of the severed and or retained lots. And 2, that no development takes place within 15 meters of the approximate regulated area or the water body unless prior approval has been given through a section 28 permit. 7, that the MTO land use permit be obtained for 1, the placement of any building or structure within 45 meters of the Highway 17 property line or within 395 meters of any intersection with the highway. And 2, the placement of any signs within 400 meters of the limit of the highway. And 3, that any future development or proposed changes in use or either the severed or retained lands must be subject to MTO review. 8, that the surveys will apply to both the retained and proposed severed lands. And 9, that all conditions must be satisfied and that the transfer documents must be signed and completed within a period of 2 years from the date of approval of consent. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the motion, moved by member Wolfowski.
That easement, it covers also for within the survey requirements?
Which easements?
The survey?
On the sketch that you were,
Yeah,
for which purposes, sorry, the easement?
well, I can't tell from that survey that Paul Goodrich attached.
Oh,
Or that it's attached,
okay.
see that little,
Yeah, so this survey plan has already been produced. So yeah, I assume that's hydro. That wasn't mentioned. If it is a hydro line, then just to add, since this report was produced, Hydro did come back to us today and said they've got no concerns or objections with the proposal, and it's the usual standard advice that I'd put actually in the package that for low distribution
Right.
voltage,
Right.
to make the necessary connections. And
thank you.
no worries.
I'm in
Yes.
favor of that, but I did have a question to ask before we close it. I want to ask the question with respect to the MTO, because there are a large number of entranceways there. And they commented that existing entrances may remain for their existing uses, and that the placement of any building or structure within 5 meters of Highway 17 property line or within 395 meters of any intersection with the highway would require an MTO building land use permit. Can somebody tell me what that is? Is that just specifically for the entrance, or does this have something to do with the structure that you're putting on there, or what does that mean?
Yeah, good. Do you want to?
Yeah, no, go ahead from what your understanding. is.
Yeah, my understanding, well, the intersection would be the intersection, say, of like provincial highways, so like that would be the buffer around that. So if this was occurring, say, down towards the Dinner Bell, for instance, there's like a radius around that because it's a major intersection of roads. In this case, is an established laneway or driveway that comes off the highway, and they're just requesting that minimum setback for any new structures at least to be at 45 meters. Would that be correct?
Yeah, and that they would require a permit to confirm that if they were putting a building.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, okay. I just
That's
wondered.
my understanding.
yeah.
Okay, so I have a mover, I need a seconder, number 4Z. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Thanks, carried. I believe there is no correspondence to review this evening. So we move to the adjournment. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by member Paquette. Seconded by member Langone. That this meeting be adjourned at 6:18 PM. All in favor? That's carried. Good night, everybody.